Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call this meeting of the Lakewood City Council to order for this Tuesday, July 5, 2022. Madam Clerk, if you'd please call the roll.
Councilmember Anderson,
Here.
Councilmember Bell,
Here.
Councilmember Boki,
Here.
Councilmember Brandstetter,
Here.
Councilmember Farmer has been excused, Deputy Mayor Moss, and Mayor Whalen.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Please stand and join me in a brief moment of silence for our men and women serving our great nation overseas, given that we just celebrated our nation's independence this last 4th of July, followed by our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, we're pleased tonight to have so many of you here to join us in our police commissioning ceremony, which is a fantastic opportunity to celebrate the good work that we do and our police officers, men and women, do for public safety here in the city of Lakewood. So I'd like at this time to call on our Chief Mike Zarro, who will conduct the oath of office for the officers. And we have Raquel Brunson, Jack Johnson, Natalie Zieber, I believe, Sean Erkfitz, and Detectives Andy Hall and Jordan Fellman, along with Lieutenant Jeremy Prater. And so the chief will kind of run the show tonight. And at the end, please stand by. We'd like to take a group photograph. And we're very, very proud of you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Mayor Whalen. And real quick clarification, Lieutenant Prater and Detective Hall weren't able to make it for family and work commitments. But a little something about the group you have before you. We do have one officer who's been with us for several years promoting to detective. That's Jordan Feldman. Has already definitely proven his skill and ability worthy of the title of detective, working in our special assault unit. Going from my right to left, we have Officer Rocky Brunson, who is a lateral. She worked for several years for the Gig Harbor Police Department, decided to go and join the circus, AKA the fire department, for a few years, decided that wasn't for her and came back to her true calling, which is police work. With all due respect to her fire friends that are in the audience. Next to her is Officer Jack Johnson, who's one of our 2 entry-level officers who's up at the academy currently. Jack actually is stepping away from his medical practice to join the police department, looking for a career in uniformed service. And it's been a drive of his for a long time, and he's finally able to achieve that goal, and we're happy that he's able to do it here with us. Next to him is Officer Natalie Zieber, also one of our entry-level officers, currently up at the academy. She came to us from the Kent Department of Corrections, working in the Kent jail, kind of, to show that, the drive to get into police work and service can start young. She does have a story about the impact that an interaction with an officer had on her when she was little, that really instilled that drive to become a police officer later in life. And then next to her is Officer Sean Erkfitz, who is another lateral from our farm team, the town of Steilacoom, who we've been lucky enough to hire several of their officers and who worked out very well. And we know that Sean's going to fit in well with our department and already has and is doing great work for us. So that's your group that we're swearing in tonight. If I could please have our judge come up and help swear them in.
Good evening, Mayor Whalen, Deputy Mayor Moss, esteemed council members, families and friends, and soon-to-be commissioned officers that I'm swearing in. Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name, do solemnly swear that I am a citizen of the United States and of the state of Washington, that I will support the Constitution and laws of the United States, the Constitution and laws of the state of Washington, and the laws of the city of Lakewood, and will, to the best of my judgment, skill, and ability, truly, faithfully, diligently, and impartially perform the duties of the office of, state your position, in and for the city of Lakewood and Pierce County, Washington, as such duties are prescribed by law. Congratulations.
Thank you, Your Honor. If I could have the council come down for a group photo, and Your Honor, if you join us. Before we take the photograph, I just want to say thank you. All of you, but I just love to see. It's just great to see. All right, congratulations.
Let's get out.
Take a 5-minute recess. Family, come on up. Okay, so our recently sworn in, if everybody heard that, you can come on up with your family and take pictures, friends and family. Friends, family, or otherwise. Oh, thanks. Big picture.
Okay, next we will turn to our proclamation section of tonight's agenda. And first we have a proclamation recognizing July as Parks and Recreation Month. And for this, we have our Chair of the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, Jason Gerwin, who will receive the proclamation with Mike Brandstetter, Councilmember Brandstetter. And then we will allow for a photo after that, so Mr. Gerwin, don't run away after comments.
Well, it's my pleasure to be able to read this proclamation. You know, whenever we do surveys of residents of Lakewood, something that always comes out high on their list of both what they like is the parks and the natural features of what we have. And also a recognition about how over the past 25 years, the park system has evolved in a very, very positive and effective way. And that a lot of folks that's due to, but the city council certainly wants to recognize the role that parks and those that make the parks the place that they are, recognize them and offer some thanks. So City of Lakewood proclamation. Whereas Parks and Recreation is an integral part of our community, making it attractive and desirable place to live, work, visit, and play. Whereas Parks and Recreation programs provide places where people can gather, reflect, re-energize, socialize, a place where everyone is welcome regardless of age, race, beliefs, or social and economic status, and a place where a sense of community is created. And whereas Parks and Recreation programs promote health and wellness, provide a welcome respite from our fast-paced, high-tech lifestyles, contribute to our ongoing economic vitality, and protect and preserve our natural environment. And whereas Parks and Recreation encourages physical activities by providing space for popular sports, active and passive trails, swimming beaches, dog parks, and many other activities designed to promote independent and active lifestyles. And whereas Parks and Recreation programming and education activities, such as out-of-school time programming, day camps, after-school programs, youth sports, and environmental education are critical to childhood development. And whereas Parks and Recreation encourages older adults to maintain or increase their independence and to promote good health, build strong minds and social connections, which helps avoid loneliness and isolation. And whereas Parks and Recreation promote time spent in nature, which positively impacts mental health by increasing cognitive performance and well-being and alleviating illnesses such as depression, anxiety, and attention deficit orders. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Lakewood City Council declares the month of July as Parks and Recreation Month in the city of Lakewood. The City Council recognizes the significant benefits derived from our park and recreation resources and confirms its commitment to sustain and maintain our parks and recreation facilities for the benefit of our residents. Proclaim this 5th day of July, 2022, Jason Whalen, Mayor. I'm pleased to provide this copy to you and invite you to say a few words.
Well, Council, Mayor, Council, I'd like to thank you for the proclamation. We recently had an opportunity to talk and thought the joint meeting went well. Appreciate you guys listening, hearing our concerns and your continued support. Definitely want to make sure we thank Mary and all her staff. They're the ones who truly do the heavy lifting and help make this community what it is. But like as we talked at that joint meeting, you know, parks are a priority and they're essential. And this proclamation helps declare that. And so with that being said, I want to put in one quick plug for biggest community event of the year. Summerfest is on the 23rd of the month and hope to see you all there. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Okay, we'll do a quick little photograph. Yeah. Next, we have a proclamation recognizing July as the anniversary month of the Americans with Disabilities Act. And for this, I'd like to call on Judy Brown, Board of Directors for Rebuilding Together South Sound, and I'll present the proclamation. Well, we are certainly pleased to present this proclamation tonight. Whereas on July 26, 1990, President George H.W. Bush signed into law the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA, to ensure the civil rights of people with disabilities. And whereas this legislation established a clear and comprehensive national mandate for the elimination of discrimination against individuals with disabilities. And whereas on July 28, we will celebrate the anniversary of the signing of the Americans with Disabilities Act. And whereas the ADA has expanded opportunities for Americans with disabilities by reducing barriers, changing perceptions, and increasing full participation in community life. And whereas the full promise of the ADA will only be reached if we remain committed to continue our efforts to fully implement the Americans with Disabilities Act. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Lakewood City Council declares the month of July as the anniversary month of the Americans with Disabilities Act, and we recognize the progress that has been made by reaffirming the principles of equality and inclusion, and we recommit our efforts to ADA compliance. Proclaim this 5th day of July, 2022, Jason Whalen, Mayor. And Judy, I'll pass this to you and let you say a few words there.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks. On behalf of the clients, board, and staff of Rebuilding Together South Sound, I am happy to accept and appreciate the City of Lakewood's recognition of the Americans with Disabilities Act. The ADA was and is a critical step towards actively including our friends and neighbors with disabilities as welcomed and needed parts of our communities. The ADA protects the civic rights of people with disabilities, as well as outlines ways to improve access to services and the built environment so that everyone can flourish. Rebuilding Together South Sound is proud to support our clients with disabilities to live safely in their homes, and we are grateful that the city provides financial resources to many agencies like ours to make that happen. Thank you again for the council's recognition of this important element of public life.
You good, thank you for coordinating. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, next. And next, we are pleased to have our school district report with our board member, Carol Jacobs.
Good evening, Mayor Whalen and our Lakewood City Council. Well, this is the first meeting in July, and of course, we've had an incredible busy June. And to me, June is always, well, there's the start of school, but June is always the completion, and it's an incredibly exciting time. Personally, I'm one of those that I love graduation. I love pomp and circumstance and the excitement of the families, from senior awards to actual graduation is unfailing for our kids. This year, Clover Park School District, we graduated 631 students from Clover Park High School, Lakes High School, and Harrison Prep in our Open Doors program. Collectively, 259 students earned awards and scholarships, and 109 students were honor grads. And I think even more exciting than that is over $20 million, probably closer to $24 million were received by our students. Clover Park High School had 13.8, Harrison Prep had almost 5 million, and then the Lakes had the rest. And like I remind people, these schools, these students, they receive these scholarships because they earned them. Colleges, foundations, or agencies don't award scholarships to kids who haven't worked hard, haven't put the effort in, and truly have earned them. So we're very proud of them and had a great graduation program. We're also proud to announce that our superintendent, Ron Banner, received the WASA Award. WASA is the Washington Association of School Administrators at their regional meeting. The WASA is given one award per region annually to nominate to someone who has effective leadership at the regional level and has made a significant contribution through WASA through his or her work in the field of education in Washington. He certainly was certainly deserving, and he received it. A big piece of it was for his work in equity for our children. Even though school just got out barely less than a month ago, we're already talking about kindergarten registration. And our schools are now registering those new kindergartners for the 22-23 school year. You can register all students by completing the online registration from the district website. To begin, children who are coming into kindergarten must be 5 years or older on or before August 31st. Child's birth certificate and proof of immunizations are required at the time of their registration. And then summer school updates. Credit retrieval classes for the Clover Park School District 11th and 12th graders began June 27th and will run Monday through Friday through August 5th. The classes are held at both Lakes and Clover Park High School. And they're also running summer enrichment programs, both schools. Obviously, interested families and students can be contacting the schools for information. Elementary and middle school students schedule is also being offered for qualifying students attending elementary and middle schools in the district. Classes are held the same time, running parallel with the high schools. One thing is very important to note, and I'm sure you guys have received a few calls. I know we have. Why are the lights flashing? The lights are flashing in school zones because our kids are in school. So, we didn't stop them for the 3 or 4 days they were out, but they are flashing because our students are there. One other thing to note, and this is kind of a personal thing from what we've been hearing about, the students returned to school this year. Granted, there were still safety and COVID protocols and practices that were taking place. And we know that there are kids going to summer school this year because of, the retrieval of what our kids have gone through for the last, 2.5 years. They're saying that to truly recover from COVID, it's going to be a 3 to 5 year trek. And I know, I have a second grader who just completed second grade, a grandson. He hasn't done a full year of what's normal school yet. And when you look at our kids who are like 9th and 10th graders, they really didn't do a normal middle school. So we are working very hard to help those students come up and achieve what needs to be done for them to be ready. But we know that, and it's not just Clover Park School District, all students are going to have a 3 to 5 year recovery from COVID. So, patience is the name of the game. And we're there for them. We will help each student, every student, receive the information and the knowledge and the education that they need. Our school calendars are now on the website for next year, so parents can plan all the things they need to plan for and working around a student schedule. I know that we do that with even for our grandkids. We appreciate the city of Lakewood going back to Summerfest. Please note that the Clover Park School District will be there with you. We will be having, we'll have games, we'll have questions, and we'll have someone there to answer anything that they will want to know about or need to know about the Clover Park School District. The other thing that's happening, the district will be offering free lunch for children 18 and years and younger this summer at several of the school district sites. The program is offered through the U.S. Department of Agriculture Summer Food Service Program. One of the things that the school board 2 years ago, our kids need to be fed. Our kids need to be fed in the summertime. So lunches are being available for students at those in need can have them, and they can check the website again as to where, when they'll be delivered, and what it takes to to notify the schools. The other thing we need, and if you know of anybody, we kind of need this to be a word of mouth. We are hiring substitutes. Like so many agencies, we need substitute teachers. We have a variety of positions to fill for our schools and for all facilities. The highest level is substitute teachers and our paraeducators. Then we need custodians, food service workers, and bus drivers. We are offering a stipend. We are having to offer a stipend for those students, for those jobs that are very hard to fill, which are the LPNs, the bus drivers. So anybody who's interested, we certainly hope that, first of all, it's a great job for a parent who doesn't want to really work full-time. If they want to work their students' hours, maybe their student school, it's a great opportunity for students to be doing that. The summer school, also the other thing is our school supply list. Those are on the website. We have done everything we can to, several years ago, probably close to 8 to 10 years ago, the list was getting really extensive. And that also meant really expensive. So we are using some of our ERSA dollars to have it not be as a burden to our district, to the families. For high school students, they will be getting lists from teachers because the offerings are so broad that it's really hard to list all of the supplies that a high school student would need. So they'll be getting those lists from individual teachers as opposed to an individual school list. So you know what? It's summertime. July is kind of a slow down time for us, but they're already gearing up for next year. So slow in that students, it's not the full blown, but we certainly have schools. We have schools open, principals in all the buildings. The principals don't take summers off. So the principals are in the buildings. If a parent or a citizen has a comment or concern or wants to stop in, they are available. I would certainly call to make sure because they are doing a lot of prep work. So any questions, comments?
Any questions? Councilmember, Deputy Mayor Moss, and then Councilmember Branstetter.
Thank you. I might have missed it, but when does school start?
I believe it's going to start the Wednesday before Labor Day.
Before Labor Day.
What happens is a couple of years ago, we did it. The kids are ready to go. They get to about a week before and they're kind of ready to go. So they go into school for a couple of days. They get the wiggles out of them. They find out where they're going, who their teachers are, what they need. We have Labor Day and we come back in and we're on the mark. So I think it's the Wednesday before Labor Day, I believe.
Okay. The 31st.
Is that the 31st? Let me open my calendar. Okay, thank you for that information. So,
No, I'm saying I should know. I'm not sure if that's when it is.
Thank you.
Mr. Branstetter.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I guess, Carol, over the past year, a little bit more as we've interacted with the Youth Council at the Youth Summit, and we've heard a lot about particularly high school age youth and middle school youth looking for better access to behavioral health professionals that have skills that focus at their age group. And I'm sure that the school board has been hearing much the same. as we look ahead to trying to get into another year to move forward, what is the school board envisioning being the landscape about achieving that goal of greater things or of otherwise mitigating the angst that some students have, if that's the right word?
Well, I appreciate that. And I have two comments to make. One of them is we did a very comprehensive survey, and we used the youth council. We did a survey about, it was for kids, it was like we had 12 questions, I believe. And yes, no, I know about this. I don't know about this. I would receive it. I wouldn't receive it. And I'm sure that study is on the website. One of the things that we found out is they were very open with, I know about it. I may not use it, but I would use it if I needed it, was kind of the response that we got from the kids. Now, as a board member, our job collectively is to tell the superintendent, please make sure our kids have access and are being heard for any mental issues or growth and development that they would have, as opposed to a board saying, superintendent, we want you to do this. We tell the superintendent, please make sure our students are, and then he goes and does that work. So just I was for clarification purposes more than anything else. But I can say this, one of the things that we have done, and we've used our COVID relief monies, some of it for the mental, because kids have, especially our secondary students, they really have struggled with isolation. They've struggled, they came back to school this year, and it was like they needed to be together. They needed to have that relationship time. They needed to know that teacher cared about them. So they did a lot of work on establishing that. The other thing is we have had extended contracts with Greater Lakes Mental Health because our kids needed more. Our counselors at high school, a counselor at high school really, they make sure their kids have got the classes that they need. They're on track for graduation, that they're where they need to be in their high school work, if you will. So we had to get specialists from Greater Lakes Mental Health, and they were great. They were a great addition, and they were a great help to our students. We also have a military grant, helping those students help in those schools specifically that are high impacted by military kids. So, and when school started last year, the adults thought, oh, we're back in school, let's go. And they were there ready to teach. And the kids were like, we're here, but we're not ready. They needed time to be back together again. They needed time to come back. And I know that I had a really hard time wrapping my head around it. It was like, come on, let's go. Well, that's because I'm the adult. So we have taken some time. We have taken some work and made sure that we've got enough counselors, that the superintendent is listening. He has a superintendent's youth council also, and he really has spent time with them, how they feel, what's going on, what do you need, what's working for you. So he really has been in depth in that kind of work. Does that answer your question?
To some extent, I'm glad to see that the issue is at the forefront of some work and some effort.
Mm-hmm.
And I respect the fact that individual students particularly would say, well, I really want it to be available, not that I need it, but that
Exactly.
to be able to go and do that. And I guess that I would wonder what the school district, in the community, in the city, can do that as the school year starts to be aware of, are things working and of causing the mindset needle to move in the direction that we want it to be able to go and do that, rather than saying, well, we put something in place and it's for this year and it'll probably work, need to have some ongoing assessments to
Absolutely.
be sure how we are doing, so we can adjust early in the first semester of next year if that's the case. Because I think, as you spoke out, you may well have teachers and staff who will come back and say, we're all ready, and students who aren't so sure when you get started, and they need to look at that. So I, would certainly hope that there's also that if you find ways in which the community can contribute to the best outcomes to that the district doesn't hesitate to make an appeal.
You know what, Mike, I would high five you if I was standing closer, because you really hit it on the head when you said our community and the city, the students are citizens of our community. The school will do everything we can to educate them. We will be the watchdogs. We will do all those things, but it really is a community city effort also. So I really appreciate saying, how can we figure this? What can we do to solve this together? What can we do to make sure that our students know that they are supported by all the entities that care about them, or that as a part of as citizens? It's really important for us all to step up and instead of saying, well, that's not me, because it's us. And those students are our kids. And there are kids who, we have to listen more close. We have to listen more closely. We have to watch. I know that in the summertime, the counselors will be having some conversations with signs. What are the look-fors of things that the students might be struggling with? And then there's also going to be what's going well for you. I think that's really important that we ask those kids, as opposed to, what's wrong, well, what's well? And we need to listen to both of those students. But Mike, you're absolutely right. This is a city, community, school problem. We've got the kids in your city. Great collaborative thing for us to be doing. And I made notes as I came in here. I was kind of disappointed that we weren't able to have our joint meeting last week, because I've been doing this for a while. I really know some things that have benefit that have come out of our joint things. And I'm hoping that this should be a great topic. What are we doing for, with, and to our kids that make them better from a community, a whole community, holistic approach? So I do hope, and I wrote down this when I was sitting there, I hope that I look forward to a possible rescheduling of our, and I know summertime gets crazy, but I hope that we can do it, and bringing those issues, bringing the issues that the school needs the city to help us with, and that the city needs the school to be aware of. So that would be wonderful. So thank you very much. You'd think I would have, sent Mike a letter saying, please ask about this. But that's a great question.
Yeah, well, I do think that the assisting young people to reach their potential and to do well, and doing like that, it's more like an interstate. There are multiple lanes. And,
absolutely.
It isn't that's the school district's lane to do that, that we all could all do that. So, and I would encourage the district to be open to initiatives from the community where they want to help and find a way to say yes, that folks can contribute.
Yeah. Well, and it's like we're going down the interstate. The interstate, we may be in a different lane, but we should all be going to the same place. And if we've got that in mind, that place that we're going to is making our community better. And how we get there is one thing, but just being there and getting there successfully, it would be a goal for all of us. So we're doing, we're doing well. I think many of you were at our Arlington project. That's the other note that I have, the Arlington project. So we're trying to do those things that bring normal back to kids, normal back to our community. And that was just a perfect, that was a great example of that. People are still glad to be there. They're glad they have the opportunity to share in something. I think Summerfest will be very successful this year because of that. The opportunity to be there, an opportunity to collaborate and be together.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you. Well,
Councilmember Bulkey and I have the opportunity to see a lot of county money flow by over our desks, and some that really hasn't hit the street yet, but bears directly on the conversation you were having with Councilmember Brandstatter, is the $19+ million that is allocated to behavioral health through the county budget in the next 18 months. So it's over $1 million a month. Lakewood is a participant in that because we're in the pool that pays that tax. Tacoma has its own. We opted to ride along with the county, but as a participant. And there's some, I'm not necessarily personally in agreement with spreading it out among 20 different entities like the county council chose to do, but there are definitely some good ones in there and some that bear directly on youth mental health. For example, Comprehensive Life Resources has a program called School Connect. It got almost $1.8 million. Locally here, the Stephen E. Cohen Military Family Clinic, devoted to military families, located here in Lakewood, is getting $1.3 million. And one of the smaller ones, but not insignificant, is Communities of Schools in Lakewood is receiving over $180,000 for a Lakewood Youth Wellness Program. But there are probably, there's a heavy emphasis in this $19 million on youth mental health, whether it's in the courts, whether it's in families that have had all sorts of disruptive influences, whether it's in the schools. So there's a lot of, and aimed at particular demographic target groups also. So we'll probably run out of providers before we run out of money. That's a problem. But this is all in addition to money that normally comes through the social services system from the state and federal government. So this is on top of that. So,
Well, I wrote down $19 million, so I've got a commitment from Don. No, I will definitely pass this on to Superintendent
but
Banner.
if you know the person responsible, I'm sure you know they already have a good idea of where to look. But if they talk to the folks at Pierce County Human Services, they can give them a breakdown of what these different programs are, because they're the ones that have to deal with the detail.
Yeah.
But those contracts should be, some of them are already in the hopper, and they should all be hopefully out in the next month.
Well, I know the district usually will hop on opportunities for, I mean, we look at our grants that we apply for, we look at the DOD money, ODA money, and we'll take that. One other agency, speaking of which, is coming back. Diane Formosa and her Caring for Kids will be providing our students the Ready to Learn Fair again this year. I believe it's going to be at Harrison Prep the second week in August, if not the first week in August. So, you know, Diane does an incredible job of making sure, you know, all the things that a kid needs on their school supply list is available to them. And it's interesting, parents start standing in line, I believe about 7 o'clock in the morning. And the doors open, I believe, at 9. And you know, before I don't know what she has planned this year, and it's her thing, but it's like they've done haircuts and they've done well checks, and they've done all those things that kids need. So, you know, that's another organization. But I will certainly pass this one on to Ron and say, okay, let's see where we are with this and jump on it. Thank you. Anything else?
I just wanted to say thank you for coming and for all the good news. I don't know if you produce with the scholarship monies that are coming to all these kids, any sort of map that shows all the great places where kids are going to go to school, from the technical colleges all the way to the 2- and 4-year schools.
Absolutely. Tech schools. We have.
It'd be great to just get that to share.
I'm trying to see how many if we have an academy. We usually have at least one student go to an academy. We have several students. Harrison Prep had some outstanding awards this year. Several Ivy League schools, for all 3 schools actually, but Harrison Prep came up with several students they could go anywhere they want, and incredible amounts of funds. And Clover Park, I said, had $13.8 million. Lakes had almost $8 million. So we had a very successful year, and it would be very interesting. We'll see. But I know that we have one of our principals is now going into. We will be receiving Renee McCord, who's been the assistant principal at Clover Park, will be the principal at Clover Park this year. Tim Stultz will be going into SSC. And I think he'll be tracking that kind of stuff to make sure that the 12 and beyond kids are tracked and where we are with that.
I think those kinds of successes that we can trumpet to the community are just
Absolutely.
fabulous. Yep.
Absolutely.
So-
Well, people are shocked about how much money the schools get. And like I said, they get that money because they earned it. And colleges, foundations, organizations do not award kids money without earning it. So we're very proud of them and, gearing up for next year.
Well, mark that as an opportunity for an agenda item, because I do hope we have a joint meeting, and we just need to get our superintendent and city manager to gel some good agenda items so we have something concrete to.
Well, if nothing
invest the
else,
time. Yeah, hopefully in August.
well, and if nothing else, sometimes just sharing those good information. If we know what the city's doing that's going to benefit our kids,
Absolutely.
and you know what the school's doing that benefits kids and families, of course, we're better off.
Absolutely.
We're better together, to use
Yep.
Ron's words.
Well, thank you again for
Thank you.
coming. We appreciate the good news.
Thank you.
Yep, take care. Now we turn to the public comment section of tonight's agenda. Public comments are accepted by mail, email, or live, virtual, or in-person comment. Comments may be submitted by mail or email to Ms. Schumacher, the city clerk, at our city address, 6000 Main Street Southwest here in Lakewood, or to her email address at bschumacher@cityoflakewood.us. Comments received up to an hour before the meeting have been provided to the council electronically, and the clerk will now read the names of those who have submitted comments in advance.
Mayor, we received written comments in advance from James Dunlop and Christina Minetti.
Thank you. Members of the audience may comment on items related to city business. Under the public comment period, comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. If you'd like to present live virtual public comments, please join the Zoom meeting with the information presented on the screen. The dial-in telephone number or meeting ID number are presented on the screen, and use the raise the hand feature to be called upon. So we will first tonight call on those who are in person and have signed in to speak. And I have the sheet. Mr. Glenn Spieth is first, followed by, I believe, Valencia Brooks, Christina Minetti, and Mr. James Dunlop.
Glenn Spaeth, Lakewood. I'm still having problems with the signal at 59th and Bridgeport. I've talked to the council about that a number of times before. If you're in a straight through lane going toward the city hall, the camera's cocked so that it looks at only the turn traffic. So you can sit there 2 or 3 cycles before you get a green light to go straight through. If there is a car that finally arrives in the left turn lane, then you get to go when they get to go. It's a little frustrating at times, but some nights it can be a lengthy delay to get to the city council meetings because that's the way I go. I'll keep it short tonight. I'm surprised that we don't have the Black Panther Party, White Panther Party, all of the others that seem to want to talk, but maybe they're coming in on the screen tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Valencia Brooks, if you're here in the audience. She may have been here for the police commission. Next, Christina Minetti.
So Christina Minetti, Lakewood. I'd like to tell you about some things that happened to me last week. On June 29th, I found that the city had blocked my email address and that of the Action Network, a well-known platform used to send in public comments. We've used it before in December twice successfully with no problem with the city. So almost 80 people couldn't submit their public comments that were due on June 30th at noon ahead of the Planning Commission hearing on July 6th. You can read the details in my written statement that you received. Then after the deadline, except for 2 of the messages, about 80 or so obviously fake comments were submitted through the Action Network. Who would do this? Obviously not someone who supported the work of the ad hoc committee as we did. since such an act was obviously detrimental. Also, it was someone with a lot of time on his or her hands that afternoon, because it took a couple of hours, who was also very determined, but not very clever. This has all the hallmarks of a primitive provocation attempt by someone who wants to discredit or undermine the legitimacy of public comments. As you might remember, the history of communist regimes is my academic specialization, so it felt a bit reminiscent of accounts I had heard about communist Czechoslovakia and Poland. The assistant attorney, Eileen McCain, tried to malign me in her letter the next day. She quoted to me my own description of the Garrio Coalition, which says that the group is engaged in education, advocacy, and agitation. The assistant city attorney let me know in no uncertain terms that agitation was not welcome in Lakewood. In fact, she treated me as if I'd been engaging in some kind of underhanded, despicable activity. Quote, I understand that many, perhaps over half the total of the comments, are suspect. The public legislative process benefits from open, thoughtful, and civil discourse, not agitation, and certainly not in disingenuous submittals, end quote. Let's hope she just doesn't know the definition of agitation. Agitation, Oxford Languages. 3, the action of arousing public concern about an issue and pressing for action on it. Example, widespread agitation for social reform. The city professes to want and even require, according to GMA, public participation. I am, in fact, helping them achieve that desired public participation for free. As a volunteer, a community organizer, this takes an enormous amount of time, and it is an honorable civic role. I request an apology from the city for this libelous insinuation meant to cast doubt on my good character. Thank you for your attention.
James Dunlop is next.
My name is James Dunlop, and I'm a Lakewood resident. I think we all agree that Pierce County Library System has betrayed Lakewood's trust over a period of many years. The former Tensler Library has been systematically neglected by what has been described as one of the most unaccountable organizations in Pierce County. We can see this unaccountability and a lack of transparency in the ad hoc library committee. Before the first meeting, there was no publicly available Zoom link and no ability to make public comments. When the lack of transparency came to the attention of Burke Consulting, the date of the meeting was immediately changed. And still, there was no ability to make public comments. When the meeting did happen, the agenda was tightly controlled. And one thing not on the agenda, which should have been, was de-annexation. In other words, Lakewood leaving the library system. Lakewood is one of the largest cities in the state without its own library system. We need to start the process of de-annexation, which would bring accountability, regardless of what happens to the Wild Air property. It would mean that if I had a complaint, the city couldn't tell me that it's not their library, not their problem. De-annexation will be difficult, not least because Pierce County Library System will fight hard to keep the 3.4% of Lakewood's property taxes. And de-annexation is rare. In 2013, Renton considered de-annexing from the King County Library System. The library system wanted to close the Cedar River Library, and it was thought that the threat of de-annexation would act as leverage. Nothing came of the plan. In Lakewood, the City Council was disrespected by Pierce County Library System by their out-of-the-blue announcement that the library was going to close and by their history of poor communication. I therefore ask the City Council to vote on putting de-annexation on the next available ballot. As with Renton City Council, I don't expect you to vote in favor, though it is possible that a petition with enough wet signatures can force a ballot. But whatever happens, as we move into the next election cycle, the issue of de-annexation won't go away. Thank you.
Those are all the individuals who have signed up tonight to speak to the council during public comment, but if you haven't signed in on the sheet, no fear, you are certainly welcome to speak to council tonight. So if you'd like to address the council, you're more than welcome to. Wouldn't want to leave you out.
Hello, my name is Jasmine Smith, and I've been a community member for decades. And as I have come to the city council to advocate for the Lakewood Library to be restored, and I've heard several public comments, I'm just so disheartened about what the city council is or isn't doing. I haven't heard any responses towards whether or not you are for keeping the library and what you're doing to make that happen. And I would think that that's something you would want to do when you hear so many of your constituents talking about voting you out. It's just disheartening. And then also, I might even see some of your posture here when you listen to your constituents as if you don't care. So I would just ask for you to address the Lakewood Library and the trees and the oak trees that's hurting our environment with the removal of the oak trees. Thank you.
Thank you. That is the last individual who has signed up to address the council physically in person. But as we've indicated, we do allow for virtual public comment. So in lieu of anyone else here physically, we'll now turn to the members of our virtual audience. The first is Carlo Minetti.
My name is Carlo Manetti, and I have been going to the Lakewood Library since the 70s. I would like to make a short comment. First, I would like to know who came up with the idea of closing the library without at least a temporary replacement in the neighborhood. To be able to read a book, I will have to drive to University Place. To get the book and return it, I will have to drive 24 miles. So at the price of $6 a gallon, you just calculate how much that cost. So not many people would be doing that. The fact that we are approaching a possible recession is another reason why not to close the library. It is strange and irresponsible that the person responsible for the closing never thought about the inconvenience he will be creating for the public when the library is closed, maybe for several years. Please think about this and keep the library open. Repair whatever is necessary and reasonable, just like any wise homeowner would do. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Dennis Haugen.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Dennis Hogan from Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Previously a resident there until 2020. One of the good things in light of what's happening at the border, in light of the fact, and this is my opinion, that your state is a sanctuary state, you will be expected to handle a lot of the growth and that's going to happen in the future. And the best thing that can happen to you with vacant land is that you get more warehouses. because warehouses are usually pretty well guarded, and it won't cost you future growth in as many police officers. Due to that, and of course, along with it, you can expect the growth in fentanyl arriving in your community. I think one quote that I looked up, in 6 months, you had 55 deaths from fentanyl. It's a very dangerous chemical going up and down the highways without any markings and coming into your community, being transported, not like other dangerous chemicals, but in cars and whatnot. Having that being said, that was voted in 2018, I believe, by many people in your community who represented your community, who are right there living in your community. And that was one of the biggest mistakes you'll ever make or ever made. And to add to all of that was something else that's come across for national attention. You see, the nation now is becoming concerned about how schools are being run. And I remember I used to keep test scores in my briefcase all the time since I was selling real estate. But I haven't looked at test scores for a few years. But John Arbini and Dave Anderson in a recent school mini brought up the fact that you have several schools that are that are not learning math and reading at the level they should have. And then, of course, certain politicians can take care of that, because if you don't know math, you have difficulty anticipating the consequences of decisions you're making. And so a lot of these people that can't read or write are being taken advantage of by certain politicians. And that's not going to be good for your community. Thank you very much.
Next is Addo. I assume Equitas, but I have one initial name that shows up on the chart. So Mr. Equitas, I believe you're next.
Yeah, that would be me. My name's Addo Equitas. I'm the chairman of the Panther Party. I'm sorry I couldn't be there today. Hey, I even got a request. Nothing wrong with that. Yeah, unfortunately, we've been very busy lately. We've been out in the city having to clean up after y'all. I had an idea though, and I think that it will help us move things along a lot quicker. And it's the "what are they still doing here" list. So let's start small, not too small. If you want to call a federal investigation small. Y'all spent a lot of time building up Clover Park today, and that was funny. Y'all like to, tell about all the great things that are happening, used car salesmen or something. But Clover Park is having some issues right now. Like a member of their board having 2 sanctions against them around racial discussion, around pushing the racial, even going as far as to use racial comments against the superintendent, to the point where now it's going into a federal investigation of the EEOC. That's a problem. What is he still doing there? So I had that to you guys' list. And now, of course, let's talk about the library system. You guys have been told time and time again that it's failing, that this isn't what the people want. So, change it, do better. I'm going to get off the libraries because I don't have much time. I want to go back to the list. So let's talk about Mike Wiley and Mike Czar. I wish I could have been there. I wish I could have, because there's nothing that I would have loved more than to attend the cop celebration day. Especially one led by Mike Zorro, somebody who has cost the money, the city money, somebody who has cost the millions of dollars. Mike Zorro, Mike Wiley, Brian Markert. They cost the city millions of dollars by wrongfully killing Leonard Thomas. They broke his civil rights and millions of dollars were paid out. You guys did nothing. And then Saeed Joaquin dies, is murdered by Mike Wiley. And Mike Zorro covers it up again, and there's Mary Robinette. So hashtag, what are they still doing there? All power to the people.
Next, Docere Pharmacus.
Yeah, I'm listening today, and it kind of almost seems like, maybe
Please
I thought we were
state
getting-
your name first, ma'am, and residence for the record.
Well, I'm not a ma'am. My name's Docere Pharmacus, and I'm a resident of Pullman, Washington. But thank you. I know I do sound pretty, right? Anyway, I'm wondering if maybe y'all don't understand fundamentally what we the people are talking about, because when we asked you what you were going to do, when we brought to you all of our issues, and we said over and over again, and I said, and lots of other people said, you need to do something to help us, right? We didn't mean proclamations, okay? Proclamations don't do anything. I mean, it's very nice for you to get up and say, oh, when we send out surveys, people say they care about, the natural resources here in the natural world, right? So we're going to make a proclamation about that. What do they say? Which natural resources? Like the Gary Oaks, maybe? Do people say they care about the Gary Oaks? Do they value the Gary Oaks? Or your survey's not that specific, right? I really want to dig into the fact that y'all wanted to shut down the Action Network, make it more difficult for Christina Minetti and concerned citizens to send in their comments, because what this seems like is y'all are getting sick of being told that you aren't doing your jobs. I mean, your response to the problem is to get people to stop telling you about it? What? Besides, once every 2 weeks, but what's that, right? I mean, you're trying to silence us, right? You are trying to silence us. And you should probably stop. Because the thing is, people all over the country right now are figuring out that this democracy does not work for them. With the recent, Supreme Court ruling, with everything else that has been happening, people are figuring out that this is not a democracy and that the government does not work for them. And when you put that on display with your tricky, by blocking public comments from being made to you, right? You're just reinforcing that. You're giving everyone a demonstration of the fact that this democracy doesn't work and that the government doesn't work for us, and that the idea that this is a country built on the idea of the power of the people and of freedom and democracy and one man, one vote is a lie. And if you don't deal with the will of the people, if you don't listen to us, if you don't deal with people like Christina who are doing things the right way and trying to get things done the right way, then those scary communists that she was talking about to make a point, those are the people you're going to have to deal with. All power to the people.
Next, Tishamir Dunlop.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, my name is Tihomir Dunlop, and I'd like to make a public comment about two things. First, I'd like to endorse the Ad Hoc Tree Committee's recommendations as a former member of it, and also highlight from those recommendations that in particular, that for any fines handed out for the cutting down of trees, in particular Gary Oaks, it's important that the contractors be fined just as much as the homeowner as they were complicit. This would also help decrease the amount of predatory logging going on. The second thing I'd like to mention is regarding the library. Recently, I heard that as we all know, unnecessary replacement building would be only complete by, quote, optimistically 2030. This is unacceptable. The city of Lakewood needs to have a functional library, a place where one can actually browse books, not some shabby pickup location like there supposedly will be in a year's time. Access to information is a human right, and although the importance of physical repositories of information such as libraries has diminished since the advent of the internet, they are still crucial to any city. Being able to browse books is crucial to the learning of everyone, especially children, so not having any library for nearly a decade is a disaster for the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other individuals who would like to testify virtually during the public comment session? If so, please raise your hands. We can call upon you. Are there any other individuals who wish to address the council during the public comment session? If not, before I close it, I just want to comment on the library comments that were made tonight by members of the audience, both physically and virtually. There is no doubt that those of us all sitting up here want a library in Lakewood. There's absolutely no doubt. We would like to have a Lakewood library within the town center, whether the existing location or wherever the library district deems it appropriate to place a new library, if that is their decision to do so. We want a Lakewood Library branch in Tillicum. We were surprised by the library's announcement to close the Tinsler branch here in Lakewood, as many of you have commented on. But notwithstanding that closure announcement, we want to partner and continue to support the Pierce County Library System. And we have done so. We've purchased property in Tillicum. The city has purchased property in Tillicum for the Lakewood Library branch to locate in Tillicum. We have helped identify and stand up this committee by investing on a 50-50 basis with the consulting agency that's going to help facilitate this public conversation about the future of the physical building and location here in Lakewood, whether at its existing location in a remodeled fashion, or whether in a new location. But we are partnering with the library system to help make that happen. We are not abdicating our interest in a library in Lakewood. We are investing in the process to determine the future of the location of the Lakewood Library, whether at its existing building or elsewhere within the city. That is not abdicating or negating an interest in having the library here. And I certainly understand the concerns that if a library is not fully open within a reasonable period of time, that will be detrimental. And that's not in the best interest of the city. And we understand that. De-annexation is a major policy issue. We understand that as well. It's likely advisable to see what the outcome is of this committee and its work before that is an issue that is entertained in a meaningful way. But we understand the concerns, but I certainly don't want the public to believe that we don't want a library or not interested or supportive of the library. That's certainly not the case. And we have invested a lot of time, effort, and resources in the 13 years that I've been on the council in working with the Pierce County Library System. So we will continue to do so, but we do appreciate your comments and for coming tonight. But we just want you to know that we're supportive of the library in Lakewood. And so that is it for comments tonight, and we'll declare the public comment period closed. Thank you. Next, we have the consent agenda. Madam Clerk.
A, approval of the minutes of the city council meeting of June 6, 2022. B, approval of the minutes of the city council study session of June 13th, 2022. C, approval of the minutes of the city council meeting of June 21st, 2022. D, approval of claims vouchers in the amount of $3,037,669.55 for the period of May 19th, 2022 through June 23rd, 2022. E, approval of payroll checks in the amount of $2,554,912.19 for the period of May 16th, 2022 through June 15th, 2022. F, motion number 2022-49, authorizing the execution of a master services and purchasing agreement with Axon Enterprise, Inc. for in-car video, body-worn cameras, tasers, and cloud storage. G, motion number 2022-50, authorizing the execution of an amendment to the agreement with R.L. Elia Company, increasing spending in the amount of $377,925.24 for the construction of the JBLM North Access Improvement Phase 1 project. H, motion number 2022-51, appointing Kyle Franklin to serve on the Community Services Advisory Board through December 15th, 2024. I, resolution number 2022-07, authorizing the city manager to seek grant funding assistance managed through the Washington State Recreation and Conservation Office for the Wards Lake Park Phase 2 project, Wards Lake BMX track project, and Harry Todd pickleball courts. J, items filed in the office of the city clerk. 1, Landmarks and Heritage Advisory Board meeting minutes of May 26, 2022. 2, Planning Commission meeting minutes of June 1st, 2022. And 3, Planning Commission meeting minutes of June 8th, 2022.
Thank you. Is there any item on the consent agenda which any member wishes to remove at this time? If not, I'll ask for a motion to adopt the consent agenda as presented. It's been moved by Deputy Mayor Moss, seconded by Councilmember Anderson, that we adopt the consent agenda as presented. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The consent agenda has been adopted. We now move to the regular agenda. Resolutions, Madam Clerk.
Resolution number 2022-8, authorizing the issuance of a conditional certificate of acceptance of tax exemption within a residential target area to AmeriGlaze Restoration LLC.
Thank you. And for this particular item, we will have an overview by our planning manager, Courtney Brunel.
Thank you, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and members of the council. Tonight before you is a request for action on the Bristol Apartments multifamily tax exemption project. Becky Newton and Andrea Bell provided an overview of this during the June 21st study session. To summarize, this project is in compliance with the downtown sub-area plan, will be the first mixed-use project in the downtown, and the developer has proposed to make 100% of the units affordable, exceeding the requirements found in Chapter 3.64 of the Municipal Code. Tonight, it is recommended that the City Council sign the resolution to authorize the city manager to sign the agreement and conditional certificate as drafted in the packet this evening. Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Anderson.
I've personally completed some economic analysis of sale and development of property with respect to tax revenue. And I think that the one here, I'm in favor of this, but I think the one here is underestimating. For example, there's probably going to be $2,000 a year in utility tax for the city of Lakewood from the day it's occupied. And there may be as much as $10,000 in Lakewood's share of the sales tax on the construction. So it's actually a much rosier picture with respect to taxes than we see in analysis.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Brandstetter.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Brunel, the action before us, we've got the requests for council action, and there was earlier the proposal, the request that came from the owner, the developer, with a commitment to that the 7 residential units would all be set aside for extremely low income housing. You know, it seems to indicate, like in the request for council action, and that it said that in the third bullet comment under discussion, it says the property is proposing to fulfill a mandate and set aside 100% of all units for affordable housing. So, and that was what I recalled reading when they submitted their application. But when we get down to the certificate says 20%. Doesn't say 100%. So it seems that although in order to get us to approve this, they have said that they would set aside 100%, we're actually issuing them a certificate that doesn't require them to actually honor that. is there what would be the process to amend the certificate? And our action today is to authorize the city manager to sign it for the the final certificate to say 100% that would be consistent with that over there. Is that some action that the council would need to take this evening as directive to the city manager to sign a certificate that said 100% in order to do that?
Councilmember Branstetter, I would say yes. The reason that we chose 20% or selected 20% on both agreements is because that is what the code requires. And so we kept that language. In order to get the 12-year tax exemption, it requires a minimum 20% set aside. The developer, as part of their application, did indicate to us that it would be 100% set aside, and that is what we've presented to you. But for the agreements themselves, we decided to stick with what the code required, which is what would be signed by the city manager.
Okay, I guess the question is, what is binding on the developer? Is it the certificate language? Or their application language and the code?
The certificate
I guess the issue is the code says at least 20%, but we're issuing a certificate that we have discussion and we've been encouraged to approve it because they're going to do 100%. And it's a small development, it's only 7 years. But 100% is really different than, 7 is different than 2. Okay. And, if we really intend for this to be a tool for both creating affordable units and getting a multifamily mixed use development built, putting 100% in the certificate as the developer proposed doesn't seem, while that is more than the minimum required in the code, I'm not sure that would we be prohibited from putting 100%?
If it was the will of the council to require 100% on the conditional certificate, we would present that to the developer, is what was approved via the city council. And
so since the developer put in their application, have they changed their mind about 100%?
No, they have not to our knowledge, but in theory, in the future, they could, I suppose, change their mind and only do the 20% over the life of the tax exemption for the 12-year period. They would be required to maintain that 20% as the code requires.
So if the council wanted to have the city manager include 100% language in the certificate, we'd have to take an action to amend. I guess my question is, how would we provide that direction, since what we're really doing is approving the resolution, which is different than that?
Councilmember Branstler, members of the council, the resolution as it's presented does not reflect what you're indicating, and therefore, in order to approve a different amount, you would need to amend it. The other option is to do as Ms. Purnell has proposed, and that is to have her work a little more with the developer and then come back to you. Because I don't hear her making assurances as to what would be satisfactory. So she may need to talk to them some more.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, I really don't want to keep batting this back and forth, okay? But I would like to accept the developer's application for a 100% of the 7 units to be affordable in the affordable range, and have this certificate show that and move it forward. I'm just at a little bit of a loss because what we're really supposed to be approving is the resolution. The certificate is kind of in an attachment to the resolution. So would it be in order to propose an amendment to the certificate? Or is it more appropriate, as Ms. Brunel said, to come back with an amended certificate?
Let me call on Mr. Anderson first and some other council members who may want to comment, and then that may generate a discussion that could result in amendment or not. Mr. Anderson.
Since we have nothing before us to amend, the initial motion could be as council desires. I'm a bit concerned. I want to know whether the bait and switch that I feel I'm a victim of right now was from the developer, from staff. We were told this is a 7-unit all exempt deal. Like, wow, that sounds good. We commented on it. People were enthused about it. We get some affordable housing. And then it comes up at 20%. And the municipal code says a minimum of 20. It doesn't say it has to be at 20 or less. So we can't have 100%. So how did this come about, and why wasn't it highlighted for us? Why does Mr. Brandstetter have to find it?
It was very unintentionally done by staff. We took the code provision and copied it into the conditional certificate. And so I recognize that we should have spoken with the developer, and we can certainly do so to request that it be amended to be the full 100% as their application indicated.
Thank you.
If they can do it, if that truly was their intention. So it may be worth setting this as over for a bit of time. Mr. Boki.
Yeah, a couple questions, Mr. Brunel. So 7 units, it helped me remember when you did the presentation prior. They're all 1-bedroom units, or?
I believe we have Andrea Bell on for specific design questions.
And what were we thinking about? What are the, okay, so what are the, I'll go from that. How many?
Page 136, it talks about them, yeah, all 1-bedrooms.
All 1-bedroom units.
Yeah.
So what would be market rate approximately? And when we say low income or whatever affordable units, what are we talking? It's always this definition of affordable
Yep.
that I get hung up on.
So affordable housing includes low and moderate income households, and that's defined by an RCW. We looked at that, and for a family of 4, this is using the program and parameters from HUD. Median family income would be $91,000, 100. Low to moderate income range would be $72,880 to $104,765 for a family of 4. It is.
Okay, well, slow down. You've already lost me. So
okay.
Start again. I heard 91,000. So family of 4.
Yep, 91,100.
Okay.
And so the overall range would be 72,880,000 to 104,765 using HUD data. And it's valued at 80 to 100 and 80% of the median family income adjusted for family size for the county where the project is located, according to the HUD value of income, which varies year to year.
And so then when we say 20% of 7, that's 1.4. Do we round up to 2 or do we round down to 1?
1.
To 1. So we're really, if this goes forward as is, we get 1 unit where they're guaranteeing affordability based upon, I think it's 30%, no higher than 30% of their monthly income. Okay. But this 104 range would be for a family of 4, be considered moderate income. So help me with that.
But you can't fit a family of 4 in a 1-bedroom.
You can't.
It's 80% and below 115% of the median family income when adjusted for family size.
Okay.
So that's the range. And frankly, I do not think that the developer would have a problem with us amending the certificate to be 100%, having spoken with them, but we've not provided them with a copy of a certificate that says 100%. I think if we proposed it and told them that they would have no problem signing it, and that is their full intention, is to provide the 100% units for affordable.
This is what I would propose. I would propose just not taking any action on this tonight at all, because I don't think it's proper for us as a legislative body to start changing contracts. I mean, could we do that? I mean, and there's just no end to that, right? We can sit
There's
here.
no motion on the table presently.
So I think it's best we just ship this thing back and let them figure it out with the developer. That's my personal opinion.
Well, at present, there's no motion on the table. We've had some discussion and an overview by Ms. Brunel. Is there any other questions or comments?
I would move to go off, continue motion, excuse me.
Resolution
2022 08 to a time certain, that being 2 weeks from today.
Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved by Councilmember Anderson and seconded by Councilmember Bell.
Point of order, tonight is a Tuesday night, so by 2 weeks, you mean the
Oh,
next regular
excuse me.
meeting, just to be clear.
13 days from today.
To table this to a date certain, or continue rather, to a date certain, meaning the next regular meeting of the city council. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Resolution 2022-08 has been set over to a date certain, that being the next regular council meeting. Next, resolution 2022-09, Madam Clerk.
Resolution number 2022-09, authorizing the inclusionary housing incentive design covenant for permit number 1622, Meadow Park 55 design review.
Thank you. And again, we have our planning manager, Ms. Courtney Brunel, for this action item.
Tonight, we also have a request for action to approve an application to utilize the Housing Incentives Program for the development of a new 63-unit 55 and over project located on the corner of Lakewood Drive and 77th Street West, about a quarter mile south of H&L Produce. The applicant is managed by the same group that applied for the Gravely Lake Gardens density bonus in January of this year. Once that approval was received, the applicant decided to increase the density at this location, and they selected senior housing on their revised application in order to comply with the parking requirements found in our code. The original approval allowed for a 42-unit multifamily development, all standard market rate with no provision for senior housing. The new proposal was submitted to the city in April. In May, the commission reviewed the proposal, held a public hearing, and made recommendation to approve the request on June 1st. Tonight, it is recommended via resolution that the mayor and city council approve the Meadow Park 55 design review proposal to permit number 1622 to utilize the housing incentives program and record a covenant to permit a 63-unit 55 and over development to include 6 extremely low income units. Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Ms. Brunel on this particular matter? Mr. Branstetter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I understand that this is different from the previous one in that it's not a tax exemption, but it is an exclusionary, to essentially go from 54 to 63. And in reading it and trying to make the documents seem consistent to me, you just read us the recommendation in the request for council action that says that the project would go from go to be 63 55 and over family units. And it would include 6 extremely low income units.
9.
When I go to the resolution and that the and I go to section 2 or section 1, it says 9 extremely low income units that we're approving for the project. So what is, and 9 is the number of additional units that the density bonus is providing. But the request for council action indicated that only 6 of the 9 would be low income, but the resolution that says 9. So I guess I'm trying to find out why 6 and 9.
That is an error. It should be 6. So per the municipal code and on page 142 of the packet, we've provided the calculation for each 1.5 additional. So for each extremely low income dwelling unit, they are allowed to have 1.5 additional on-site market rate dwelling units. So for the 6 that they're providing that are extremely low income, they are also getting 3 additional market rate dwelling units. So the total density bonus is 9 units, 6 of which are extremely low income.
So the resolution in section 1 should say 6. Well, should it say 6 additional, it is 9 additional units, but it's only 6 low income units.
Correct.
Right?
So
So there's some different language needed there. The down in the then in the housing incentives covenant, which is what is being looked at here, it talks about that the and let me find the right paragraph that's on. So I'm looking on page 3 of the covenant, page 148 of our packet. There is a section D, and it says if the applicant converts to another use any of the new multifamily residential housing units constructed, that they'll notify the assessor and that they'll do that. What's the impact of what happens is though if he converts it? This sort of allows him to convert it and make some notifications, but then what happens?
we will actually be requiring a separate covenant be recorded for the senior housing provision because parking is a concern with this project if it was not dedicated for senior housing. So there will be a separate covenant for this project that the applicant is required to complete. We kept them separate and apart because this seemed like a standalone topic, and then the 55 and over will be recorded separately.
So 5 years from now, if they want to convert it from 55 and over to market rate, is there the covenant require a penalty other than notifying the assessor?
We would say no unless they were able to provide additional house or parking on site. And so there wouldn't be a way for them to change the use given their existing site configuration.
So we would, so if our interest is in increasing the senior housing in the city, this looks like a good deal. 64 senior, 55 and older, 3 units that are going to go into the pool of rental housing that's available. But I guess what I interpreted you saying is we have no way of enforcing that it stays 55 and over as long as the developer comes up with a few more parking spaces. And it'd be kind of after the fact, he converts it and then we tell him you've got to have more parking spaces.
No, with any change of use, we would require a license. And during that time, we would be reviewing if the change of use was compliant with our code and with any agreements on the project. And so for this case specifically, if he was to change from 55 and over senior housing and move to market rate housing, he would be required to come up with almost an entire half parking space additional for each unit, which he does not have the space for. And so we would not permit that to occur, and we would essentially say that that use is not allowed at that location. But if there was at some point a proposal to come forward with market rate housing at this location, or not market rate housing, but with, non-55 and over, we would be able to approve that adjusted use if they were able to comply with all of our development regulations. So find additional land and provide additional parking.
But the covenant is strong enough that he would have to put the parking in place before he actually converted anything from 55 and over.
Yes, and we would have the safeguard to enforce that covenant if we found out that it was changed without our knowledge, and that parking was thus a concern and an issue.
And I had one other point I wanted to ask about, and let me find it so I can. Yeah, I'm on page 147 in paragraph A of the covenant, and there it does restate, as you said, 6 extremely low income units. But then it says for a total of 36 permanent residential units with is that a Scrivener's error and supposed to say 63 or? It says 63 parenthetically, but 36 in the wording. And I would suggest, Mayor, that that's a Scrivener's error.
Yes.
That's correctable.
We do need to scrub this a bit to get the right numbers in the right spaces here. Mr. Anderson, I believe, had a comment, and then I think we'll talk about some cleanup work on the section 1 on page 144 of the packet to make sure it's consistent. Mr. Anderson.
I just wanted to make sure I understood correctly. You talked about using the parking space, the practicality of not being able to add the extra parking spaces as the leverage to enforce the agreement. But isn't it correct that there's going to be a recorded restriction on the title?
Mm-hmm.
Is it contemplated that it's a permanent restriction, or is it going to have the parking space proviso in it?
No, it would be permanent unless it was applied to be removed, requested to be removed.
Thank you.
Mr. Boki.
So thank you very much. We'll clean that up. So I've pulled up the HUD numbers now. I'm feeling a lot better. So when you say very low, or is it extremely low?
Extremely low, 30%.
Okay, so the way this has, if it's one person, the income limit can't be more than $21,350 in Pierce County. Okay, so it would be a senior with presumably and I don't know, are there carve outs for disability and various things like that? If
None
my
proposed.
social security, what happens if my social security disability is more than, I mean, that's not, 21,000 is not a lot of money, but so he's looking, or in this particular case, and how many of those units? There'd be 6 of those.
6.
No. Okay. Have we done this bonus density before?
One other time, but it wasn't for a 55 and over project. It was in January of this year, the Gravelly Lake project that was approved over on, I want to say it was Meadow, but no, it was Gravelly Lake Drive. And it was approved in January, same developer who then came forward to revise this. So in the many years that this has existed as a code provision, we've only seen it come forward twice.
And so help me with this for our edification. So we have the density bonus based upon if it's very low, extremely low, or just very low, or
Extremely low and very low, but extremely low allows for a larger bonus.
okay. So for very low, one person, one senior citizen would be 35.5. If it was 2 people, it'd be $40,000 limitation, at least in 2022. So that's what we're talking about. And then you get the density bonus of 1.5 per extra unit. I have been told by someone who studies this that this individual's opinion was that this is actually a more effective way to try to get more low-income housing than the tax exemption is. So, and it's just something I think we need to do. And so I'm in favor of it, but we'll just make that amendment, but we don't even have a motion yet, do we?
Mr. Anderson, then Mr. Branstetter.
Actually, the way that would work, I agree with Mr. Bullock's figures on extremely low. I think for 2, it's something just over $24,000. But what that means is that these effectively will be housing choice, formerly known as Section 8 units, where the tenant will pay $550, $600 a month, 30% of their income. And the voucher, which doesn't count as part of their income, pays the rest. So that's why it's an incentive to the landlord, because you can get a market-based rent. You have to rent to tenants who are less creditworthy, may have a troubled history, don't have the income to pay for damages, and you have to comply with additional inspections annually, which takes a burden off our inspection program because we exempted those units. So these are basically going to go in the Section 8 pool.
For seniors, though.
Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Branstetter.
Yeah. I understand Mr. Anderson's question about the covenants. Is that the right word of this document? The covenant gets recorded on the title of the property to be able to go and do that. And so to be able to go and do that. And while the 6 additional units being for low income I value that I place greater value in terms of our overall look at housing about getting a 63 unit, 55 and over rental property. The problem with the covenant, and you say that that's what's the enforceable document, doesn't say 55 and over rental housing anywhere in it. We're not really requiring that. And we go back to the only thing is, well, if they go and add a couple of more parking spaces, they can change things around. I mean, I guess I would like to see the covenant. It has specific details about your report about how you deal with the 6 units, but somehow saying that the property will be a 55 and older property, it seems to me should be a part of the covenant if the covenant is what's enforceable.
So that there will be a separate covenant for the 55 and over portion. But I don't believe that it's required to have the city council's review. And so that's why we didn't include it in the packet. It will be recorded on the property, and the property owner has agreed to provide that. So in order to have it removed and take it off of the property to adjust the use in the future, if somebody else was to purchase the land, they would have to come to us and say, this is showing on the title. And at that point, we would have to give them permission to remove it and change the use, which would bring us to the discussion of where is the parking and moving down that path.
I guess that's confusing to me in that we're going to approve a covenant that's going to go onto the title, and then later we're going to approve another covenant?
Yes.
Or the city council is not going to approve the second covenant?
The second covenant was recommended as a way to safeguard the use type, because typically we don't require for 55 and over, as long as they're meeting all of our standard code provisions, there is no other enforceable use restriction that we would typically apply. But it was suggested that we could use a separate covenant. And so that is that's the approach that made the most sense to ensure that this project remained 55 and over, because we anticipated that this would be an issue of concern.
Okay. Is there a reason that second covenant couldn't be a part of this package of resolution?
No, we could bring it back forward.
All right, thank you. Mr. Mayor, I think I'm in the same place as the previous one. I would just sort of like to see the package of documents tidied up before we take final action on this. And is that, if that is doable in 2 weeks, then I would, then I would move to continue consideration of resolution 2022-09 to a date certain being July 18th, 2022.
So it's been moved by Councilmember Brandstetter that this resolution be continued to a date certain, July 18th, to provide for additional correction of some wordsmithing and to provide the additional covenant on the 55 and older restriction on title. It's been seconded by Councilmember Boki. Any further discussion? I'll just comment I'll speak in favor of the motion on the table, but also in favor of the project. I had a chance to go out and look at the property. It's a beautiful piece of property. It's within walking distance to H&L, within Starbucks over there, and the other amenities down the street. It is really a good project because the site was a bit tight for parking. Staff really did yeoman's work working with the developer, from my understanding, to come up with a creative solution, and that being an opportunity to reduce the need for parking by focusing on the occupants. Those that were 55 and older under the code would then require less parking per unit for this kind of a project. And to the project developer's credit, the density bonus is a positive thing for us because it does provide for at least 6 units for the qualified low-income housing as referenced in the resolution. I think that's a wonderful opportunity to mix populations, if you will, for the betterment of all folks living in there. I think it's really a positive project. So looking at it from a 30,000 foot level, this is exactly what we want in the city. Really good housing opportunities for a demographic that significantly needs more and better type housing in this arena. So I know we can wordsmith it and spiff it up, but I don't want to put too much more impediments on people who are trying to bring good projects to market here. So that's my pithy comment for the day. All those, unless there's any further discussion, all those in favor of the motion to continue to a date certain, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? July 18th is the date to which it is set. Thank you.
Mr.
And
Mayor.
it doesn't create any problems for the applicant with
We
the
will
extra
notify
time?
them tomorrow, and I don't believe so.
Great. Yes, Mr. Anderson.
I'd like council to remember this moment. This is a great example why local government does best and the Puget Sound Regional Council doesn't. Because we know that if we have a senior unit at this particular location, probably maybe have one car per unit. And if you have the old Fur Acre site where you rent 2-bedroom apartments to 20-something service members, you need 3 parking spaces per unit, which we don't have and have trouble parking on the street. And the global planning that comes out of Seattle doesn't recognize the local issues like that. So I think commend staff who did a good job in being flexible and working with the developer and having something that works for our community.
I'll show you the map. It's again, it's a beautiful, flat, level, really nice piece of property. Yeah, so thank you very much for all your work on that, and we look forward to it. No, we did. We voted, yep. It's continued to July 18th, correct? Ms. Wachter? Just nod your head and say yes.
Is the question whether you voted?
Mr. Boki asked the question. I said, yes, we did. It has been continued to a date certain, July 18th.
Correct. Yes, I rely on the clerk for those matters.
That's good. We have someone to rely upon. Thank you, Ms. Schumacher, for being here tonight. Thank you very much. Is there any unfinished business to attend to? Ms. Kraus?
There's no unfinished business.
Oh, there it is. There's no unfinished business, so then we go to new business. There's no unfinished business to attend to. The new business is motion 2022-52, Madam Clerk.
Motion number 2022-52, termination of the Lakewood landmark designation for the Hopkins House located at 7520 North Street Southwest, Lakewood, Washington.
Very good. And Ms. Brunel, you can't get rid of us too quickly, so you're up.
Last one for me tonight. Before the council is a request from a local property owner to have her property removed from the Lakewood Landmarks Register. The property is known locally as the Hopkins House and is located at 7520 North Street Southwest. The property was designated in 2006 via a proclamation as a Lakewood landmark. To date, this is the first request that we are aware of to terminate a Lakewood landmark designation. The process for termination is outlined in Chapter 2 of the Lakewood Municipal Code. On May 26th, the Landmarks and Heritage Advisory Board held a public hearing and made recommendation to terminate the designation at the property owner's request. Tonight, it is recommended that by minute motion, the Lakewood City Council accept the Landmarks and Heritage Advisory Board's recommendation to terminate the designation of the Hopkins House from the Lakewood Landmark Registry. Thank you.
Any questions of Ms. Brunel on this one? Are there any benefits that the person would have received by the landmark designation over the course of time that now is kind of going away?
If they had chosen to do any type of remodel, they could have received a tax refund by being on the local Lakewood Landmark Registry. The local registry is the only historic register that really has any meat to it, if you will. State and national registers are honorary designations, whereas the local landmark registry is the one where we assign design review criteria. So by removing themselves from that list, they will not be subject to design review criteria as outlined in Title or Chapter 2 of the Lakewood Municipal Code. The reasoning behind this request, I believe, or I happen to know, is that they were unable to secure refinancing because there were no comps available, because this is a unique site where it was only on the local landmark registry and not on the state and national registry. So their appraiser was unable to find any comps.
Mr. Boki.
Mr. Mayor, I move approval of motion number 2022-52.
It's been moved by Councilmember Boki, seconded by Deputy Mayor Moss, that we approve motion 2022-52. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion has been adopted. We now return to reports by the city manager, Ms. Kraus.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and you. Sorry. Is really about parks. So on June 7th through August 30th, we have the Lakewood Farmers Market occurring between 2 p.m. and 7 p.m. July 12th, 19th, and 26th, we have summer nights at the Pavilion concerts between 6:30 and 8 p.m. July 23rd, between 11 a.m. and 10 p.m., we have Lakewood Summerfest at Fort Steilacoom Park. And that concludes my update.
Thank you. And then in early August, just as a reminder to all of us, we have the National Night Out, and I assume there will be a opportunity for those of you who would like to attend that to put your name up if you'd like to be escorted by one of our fine police officers throughout the neighborhoods that will be assigned by Ms. Schumacher, I believe, by district. So more to follow on that.
Yes, that is scheduled for August 2nd.
Very good. Well, thank you very much. We'll turn to council comments briefly here. Mr. Boki.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of things. Went to the concert/farmers market on Tuesday. A decent crowd considering the threat of rain, and it was a little bit chilly for a summer concert, but that was cool. The music was good, and I think it went off really well. I do want to follow up. I mean, it's been about a month now since I kind of ranted at the end of our meeting about the library. I think there were good comments tonight about the library. All it seemed accurate in my mind. I think we're going to get the city manager and staff on an engagement plan with the library. I mean, they clearly, and what I would like to see, it's not our library, right? And we need to keep making that clear. But what we also need to make clear to the library system is that we expect them to build a library in the city of Lakewood, or at least open a temporary location, which I think could be a temporary location for years. An adequate size library within there. And we need a timeline from them, right? I mean, I think the one thing missing is we just need a timeline from them. Is it Labor Day? Are you going to open on Labor Day? What day should we expect you, and what are the penalties if you don't? And how are we going to go about doing this? So that's what I'd like to see going forward. I think that's all. That's pretty much what we can ask for, is to say we want to know. And I think we should expect from our staff that every couple of weeks we get a report that says, here's what we know. And we spoke to the library. They need to be having, the city manager needs to be having discussions with the executive director of the library system on a weekly basis, if that's what's necessary. That's my opinion, but anyway.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brandstetter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have to say that I really appreciated having the opportunity to celebrate the 4th of July, and my sensing, both personally and from comments that I got, is that while we're hoping to condense the period of when there was fireworks, I think we made progress in that regard. I think the fireworks on Saturday and Sunday were diminished, and the things were more congregated on the 4th, which is what we the change that we made, and we knew that it was both a combination of education. It would take a couple of years to get everybody into going that forward. The 4th is already passed, So we are now in a window of where if we want to make any further tweaks, it's for 2024. To be able to go through and do that. So I'm looking forward to both the fire department and the police department's an analysis about how fireworks safety played out this year. But I think the community sort of responded to the only one day well, okay, for the most part, to be able to go and do that. I was also very appreciative that on July 4th and on Independence Day that that 4 Vietnam veterans finally got the Medal of Honor, that their actions over 50 years ago earned them in terms of being deserving to be able to go and do that. Seems you can take an awful long time to say thank you to some things to be able to go and do that. I think that we ought to be looking at going ahead to do that. And then one final item, Mr. Mayor, when we were talking as a council and we were discussing how to deal with the remainder of our ARPA dollars, that our consensus was that we would sort of look at it as what is it that we want, and that we'd move to an RFP process rather than doing that. And I think that process can be broken up into some segments of things that we'd like to see accomplished for the community with those dollars. And I would suggest that one of the easier ones to deal with that, and it could be sort of a beta test for us to work on the RFP process, is to take a look at building the capacity and resiliency in the area of food and food needs to do that. And I'd like to ask if we could put on the agenda for the study session so that we could perhaps discuss that particular issue, so that we could give staff some framework to design an RFP around capital investment in the food program. I think we've got food banks that might apply for a capital investment for a freezer or a vehicle. We can be certain that the Emergency Food Network, who is in the midst of consolidating funds from multiple sources for a renovation of their warehouse, would submit an application. But I think staff would need to know from us, are we willing to put $600,000 in that category, and how do we want to define what's eligible in an RFP to do that? And I think that discussing that, as one issue, and give staff some guidance. I don't think we're ready to have that discussion around homelessness and and things yet, but I don't think we need to wait till we want to discuss all the RFPs. We can do one and maybe both. I think that could be productive for us in terms of how we then discuss the other major areas that we want to use ARPA funds to invest in. But food resiliency, I think, is perhaps, in capacity, is probably the lowest hanging fruit that ought to be on that list.
And I don't recall when we're set to study the next iteration of ARPA funds. Do we know? Ms. Wachter or Ms. Kraus? We can chat about that and then we can get back to council.
July 25th.
Is that right? So we can likely put some consideration of that issue on the table. Mr. Anderson?
On that issue, I'd suggest we should get a compilation of the federal, state, county, and private dollars that are available for food banks. There's literally tens and hundreds of millions of dollars floating around. It's because it's the low hanging fruit and it's recognized, well, we can do something for food. So I've seen many of the contracts and grants and fund sources, and I couldn't give you a number, but I know there's a huge amount of money. It may even be overfunded. And then anecdotally, I saw a line at a food handout, and there wasn't a car there that was over 6 years old. So there's no means testing at the present moment. So I agree that it's going to be an ongoing need for a certain segment of the population. We just have to be careful that it's before we choose it as our first priority, that we make sure that they aren't already well funded and it isn't just competitors trying to come into the market. I'll run a food bank and have my own nonprofit kind of thing, because that's going on out there too. And auditors are starting to come down and various nonprofits, not just food, but others where it's an opportunity for entrepreneurs in the social service business to come forward and create jobs.
Very true. And maybe need to set aside some ARPA funds for, dilapidated buildings like those that house libraries. We'll see. Mr. Anderson, you're next.
I would note there's some irony that from the comments tonight that we were admonished to do the right thing by someone who doesn't follow the rules and identify themselves by their legal name. Which I think should be an automatic disqualifier for considering anybody's opinion. But I would agree with the commentator tonight regarding consideration of de-annexation of the city from the library district. I think that consideration, not necessarily action, should be sooner rather than later, because we know that the library moves at a snail's pace or slower. I call it the rule of 5 Ps, the less polite versions, the 6 Ps. The 5 P rule is poor planning predicts poor performance. And there is no planning. So what do you expect for performance? My back of the envelope calculation is that we contribute about $4 million citizens of the city of Lakewood, or all property owners, contribute about $4 million a year to the Pierce County library system. And if you look at Puyallup, who has their own library system, it would probably cost us $5 to $6 million to run a robust library system in the city of Lakewood. But that's back of the envelope, and it's within it's not exponentially inaccurate, but it's by no means numbers we could make decisions on. I think we need numbers that we can make decisions on with respect to that, what our capital options are, and move on that, because I think it's probably the only leverage we have. We've tried incentives like tying up property for the main library and buying property for the annex, and just communicating with them for years regarding joint efforts and creating some community center. And out of that, we got no communication and the rug pulled out from under us. So I sympathize with the citizens of Lakewood. I think Mr. Volke mentioned before, we may be on our way to being the largest community in the country that doesn't have a library. And that's unacceptable. What the library of the future looks like, I don't know. Maybe it doesn't take that big a footprint. And people take the tablets out instead of books, and they can have 1,000 different books on a tablet. But we'll see. So I'd like that to be looked at sooner than later for leverage, if nothing else. That's it.
Very good. Councilmember Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Since we're on the topic of the library, I too agree. It's unacceptable. And I think that a plan needs to be brought forth. Like Councilmember Boki stated, a timeline, something. I don't feel like there's been adequate communication on where we're at right now. Everyone is just obviously up in arms. And I think the Pierce County library system definitely needs to work with staff, city manager to give us something. And I would appreciate regular updates on it too. And I think the rest of council would also. So, and I appreciate people still speaking about the library system. It is relevant. I use it, my child uses it. And so it is something that I know is a great loss for the community. So, and then I would like to congratulate the newly commissioned officers. I think that that was great that they were here. This was my first in-person commissioning, so I thought that that was really wonderful to be a part of, and I want to thank them for that. And also to hear about the school update for the Clover Park School District and the scholarships. I just found that really, really exciting and important to hear and encouraging for kids to know that those opportunities are out there and that their schools are helping them get that. So that is it for me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Great, thank you very much. And just briefly on the issue of the library, why don't we plan on having within the reports by the city manager, kind of a standard report by the city manager on the library district and what's going on with the subcommittee, what's going on with the library every Monday night until we have a plan. So we'll have a standing report by the city manager on it so we can report to the community. And it may be a very short report, but we'll have a report. Yep. And speaking of the library, in terms of feedback, there was some email we got or some comment. I don't know if it came through to all of us, but there was some concerned neighbor about not only the closure of the library, but the lack of maintenance of the facility with, shall we say, naughty behavior outside of the library, drug paraphernalia. Someone had mentioned in an email, I think, to all of us. So it's an inquiry to the library folks to say, as part of the plan, because we have to report to city council next Monday night, what is your plan to maintain the physical facility and security to avoid problems within the neighborhood that people are concerned about? Concert in the park I attended last week. I thought it was well done. It was a little chilly, but those of us who got out there to dance on the dance floor, Mr. Boki's wife was with the rest of us. You were not. So we kept warm by, enjoying the music and dancing with the folks. Fireworks, I thought, again, we'll see what happens with the public safety report when it comes back, but it seems like people did honor the restriction and mostly lit their fireworks on the 4th. Of course, there was a lot of stuff going on the 3rd, not as much today on the 5th, but hopefully, we're making improvements on that. So we'll learn more when Chief Zorro gets back to us next week or two. That's all I have. So now we are going to recess into executive session for 15 minutes pursuant to RCW 423110 sub 1 to discuss with legal counsel representing the city certain legal risks of a proposed action or current practice that the city has identified when public discussion of the legal risks is likely to result in an adverse legal consequence to the city. That will be followed by a second executive session for approximately 15 minutes pursuant to RCW 423110 sub 1 sub G to review the performance of a public employee. The council is not expected to take action following the executive session. So at this time, we are in recess, or in executive session rather, in the conference room. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry, Mary. We'll bring it back before I adjourn. I'll bring you up. How's that?
I didn't remind you either. That's my fault.
I know.
I really didn't have it.
Please.